welcome to today's edition of the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. I'm Kat Kalashian, our Europe correspondent here in Paris. And today I'm speaking with Sophia Titley, who's our editorial director and has lived all over the world, including for much of her life in Bali. So she has some great personal insights into things that everyone should know before they consider a move to Bali. So welcome, Sophia. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me, Kat. So talking about Bali, it has a well-deserved reputation as one of the most sought-after destinations in the world, not only for travel, but for full-time expat living. And the reason why it's so popular and has been for so many years is because it's so naturally beautiful. It has lush jungle, it has volcanoes, it has these terraced rice paddies that cascade down the valleys. It has an amazing coastline with postcard perfect beaches. And with all this natural abundance, you have all kinds of outdoor recreation opportunities like surfing, diving, snorkeling, etc., all manner of water sports. But as idyllic as Bali may seem, like any place, it has its upsides and its downsides. So I wanted to go over a list of some of the things you should consider if you are thinking about life in Bali. The first thing to know is that Bali is culturally distinct in the context of Indonesia. So the country is made up of many islands. There's over 17,000 of them, and each island has kind of a subculture. And Bali is one of the only ones that has a Hindu majority population. So it's religiously distinct from the rest of the country, which makes it really interesting. And with this religious practice, they have all sorts of ancient tradition that is still very much alive despite the religion being there for hundreds of years. And you can see this everyday living there, that tradition still rules the day for Balinese people. So you see people, for instance, putting these handmade offerings outside their house every single day. They have processions quite often. At least once a week, you'll see a huge line of people walking down the street, carrying out some sort of religious procession. They burn incense constantly, so there's kind of a nice scent to go along with the cultural uniqueness of Bali. You hear music, etc., which is really nice because sometimes you go overseas and you don't get that strong sense of the local culture, but in Bali, it's very much alive and well. Bali is just 8 degrees south of the equator, and as such, it has a warm tropical climate year round. So it's a two-season destination. It's got um, a dry season and a wet season, and hot weather year round, usually between around 30 degrees Celsius or around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The national language of Indonesia is called Bahasa Indonesia, and it is a simplified language, so it's very easy for expats to pick up, which makes Bali stand out in my mind compared to a lot of other Southeast Asia destinations where learning the language is going to be not, if not impossible, it's going to be really difficult for you. But luckily in Indonesia, they have this common tongue that kind of unites all the various languages and subcultures that make up Indonesia because it's a very linguistically diverse country. It has over 700 spoken languages, and Bahasa Indonesia is a simplified language that everyone can learn and pick up very easily. Bali, not surprisingly, it has some of the most spectacular sunsets in the world, and they're best enjoyed from the beach, which is never far away when you're on this small island. There are two cost of livings in Bali. So you have the local one and the foreigner one. Local people make around $200 a month, whereas expats usually live on about $1,000 a month, more or less. Um, and that goes for things like living situations, how much you spend on a cup of coffee, your transport options. There's the expat way, and then there's the local way. So an expat might spend, say, $3 or $4, the equivalent of, on a cup of coffee, whereas a local is going to go to a local place and spend about 20 cents or less. So you can kind of tailor your cost of living in Bali. You can go for a more local way of life, or you can splash out and spend a bit more if you want to. Another thing to know is that the motorbike is the standard mode of transport. And it is common to see a family of up to five or more people, maybe a pet as well, squished onto the back of a motorbike, sometimes wearing helmets, sometimes not. It's not the safest way of traveling, but it is the most convenient because across the island you have these narrow roads that are all convoluted and winding, and a motorbike just happens to be the easiest and cheapest way to get around. But it is not for everyone. Another part of Balinese culture that's really great if you're living there to be a part of is massage. So, all over Bali, you have spas, and you can indulge in Balinese massage for as little as $10, maybe even less in some places. So, that is a really nice, low cost way of spending your time enjoying yourself in Bali, is taking advantage of the massage culture there. Another thing that is really big in Bali is surfing. So surfing is probably the reason why it has such a big expat community today. The waves that you find on Bali's beaches are world class. Some of them are not really safe for beginners, but you can kind of pick and choose if you do want to get into surfing which beach you go to. There are some that are more friendly and some that are more hardcore. Indonesia has some of the strictest property ownership laws of any country in Asia. So this is a big downside to a lot of expats who are thinking about Asia because they don't make it very easy for you to actually own property. And in Indonesia specifically, the best you can hope for is a long-term lease that they're typically extendable for up to 90 years. And a lot of expats go for that, even though it's not as great as just owning property outright. They just kind of accept the terms for their slice of paradise in Bali. Bali is also a major destination for wellness tourism. So if you're interested in mindfulness, meditation, yoga, spas again, or relaxation focused activities, including even high end luxury ones, Bali is a great place to be because you'll find those things in abundance. Another thing you'll find there is a very trendy bar, restaurant, and cafe scene. So they're very into their cold brew coffee, and chefs from all over the world have set up little restaurants here. You can find everything from high end, innovative eateries. You have tasting menu experiences, there are craft breweries. It's a very trendy place to be if you are into that sort of thing. Bali has an international airport called Negara Rai, and it is a major travel hub in that region of the world, but not currently under the pandemic situation. Um, as a North American, you're still looking at a long haul flight from North America to somewhere in that general region to get to Bali. So you're looking at a stopover. Unfortunately, there's no direct flights between North America and Bali. In Bali, you also have all kinds of options when it comes to delivery services. So there are all these apps. It's a very tech savvy country, and they you can have anything you want delivered to your house, from like a cocktail to a takeout dinner to pet food, chlorine for your pool, anything you can possibly think of. You can have it delivered to your house using these local apps. There's one called Gojek, for instance, and it's really inexpensive. Rental agreements, if you decide to live here and don't want to mess with property ownership laws, you can always rent, but the rental agreements work a little bit differently in Bali. So, one thing to note is that landlords typically ask for your full payment of your entire rental agreement upfront. So, that can be 12 months' rent in one payment. And before you do hand over any money, you should make sure that the place that you're renting is um, in tip-top shape, because once you hand over the money, you're on your own. No one's going to be coming over to do repairs or fix things up, or if your electricity goes out or there's a plumbing issue, you're paying for that yourself. Another thing to know is that corruption is a big problem in Indonesia. It's kind of just worked into the system and accepted. And the legal system is designed to protect Indonesians. So, as a foreigner, if you get into any sort of dispute with someone, a local person, you're going to most likely be on the losing side of that dispute. Most expats in Bali hire some form of household help. whether it's a cleaner or a gardener, a pool attendant, nanny, driver, security guard. You can hire a local person pretty inexpensively. Again, the local monthly wage is about $200 a month. And most expats do this because for retirees, for instance, it's a stipulation of the um, residency visa that you hire a local person. So that's one way of getting around that stipulation. Development is rampant in Bali. It's a major tourism destination, and specifically along the southwestern coast from Uluwatu to Canggu, and now it's even creeping up past Canggu. You have all sorts of malls, hotels, resorts, uh, just kind of cheap entertainment options. It's the development that is happening is rarely in keeping with Bali's natural beauty, which is really disappointing. But I understand that the country is trying to um, grow economically, so that's just an unfortunate reality of Bali. Bali is part of the Coral Triangle, so this is the area with the most marine species in the world, and it has 7 times more marine species than the entire Caribbean, which I think is incredible. So if you're interested in snorkeling, scuba diving, whale watching, dolphin watching, free diving, fishing, etc., you can practice it here, and chances are you're going to see some pretty amazing things. You also have all sorts of attractions on land, which I think people forget about sometimes. You have beaches, volcanoes, rivers. You can go whitewater rafting. You can go mountain biking. There are waterfalls. So there's lots to see in terms of natural beauty on land in Bali. Indonesia takes drug related offenses extremely seriously. So if that is something that if you're curious or interested in drugs, this is not the place for you. They enforce the death penalty for drug related offenses. Indoor outdoor living is a really popular style in Bali. So a lot of the homes are designed to have, for instance, they don't always have four walls. They have maybe like an inner courtyard area that's just open to the the air, I guess. And with that, you get a lot of critters in your home. So bugs, geckos, occasionally snakes, things like that. They're kind of part and parcel of life in Bali. Unfortunately, for some people that don't like those types of creatures. Bali has a huge expat community and it's made up of people from all over the world. So that includes a good number of retirees, but there's also people from different age demographics. So you have young families, you have digital nomads, people who are there for the yoga lifestyle, um, and supporting that sort of diverse age demographic. There are quite a few international schools. There are 11 international schools in Bali, and they cater to whatever needs you might have. So if you want a more, for instance, self-study type of school, they have that. They have, I believe, a British school. So they vary in size, price, and academic standards. One thing to know, you do have a lot of wild monkeys in Bali, and people, especially from North America, are amazed to see them just living freely on the streets, and they're sort of tame, sort of not. I highly recommend that you do not engage with them at all. I have gone through the course of rabies shots after having an encounter with a monkey in Bali. So definitely my top advice would be to not touch or engage with the monkeys. The standards of healthcare on Bali are just okay. So for most minor things, you'd be fine going to one of the local hospitals there, the private hospitals, that is. But for serious procedures, a lot of expats will prefer to go to Singapore or Thailand or another regional destination with higher standards of healthcare for their superior care. And they do that, they have international health insurance plans that cover them in the event that they need to have a more serious procedure done. So that's really important to have if you're living in Bali full time. Another thing that most people don't really realize is that Indonesia offers a retirement visa. and it's available to anyone over the age of 55 who's got an income of about $1,500 a month. And you just have to meet a few other requirements. One of the more oddball ones is that you hire a local person to do some form of work. So I mentioned earlier you can have household help, a nanny, a driver, things like that. That's how you can meet that stipulation of hiring a local person. Unfortunately, one major downside to Bali is that it has a litter problem. So there are more people, especially during the height of tourist season, than the trash management system can keep up with. And during the rainy season, a lot of the garbage that gets left around the island gets washed down into the rivers, and then that ends up on the beaches, which is a really unfortunate and disappointing thing to see. Another thing to be aware of is that the local people, after years of catering to tourists, they assume that you have more money than them, and in most cases, you do. And so they may try to gringo price you or the equivalent in Bali, or they might ask for a loan or a handout. It's very common if you establish a relationship or friendship with an Indonesian person that at some point you are asked for help, financial help. Traffic is not good on Bali. It's a small island with a lot of people and it's very congested. And like I was mentioning earlier, the roads are very convoluted and small. So even with all the motorbikes, you do get a lot of traffic and it can be a real nuisance if you're trying to travel around the island. Another thing to know is that Bali is in the Ring of Fire. So it's in a very tectonically active area and there are earthquakes, there is a risk of tsunamis, there are volcanic eruptions, things are happening there all the time in terms of its tectonic activity. Balinese art forms, so it's a very artistically um, talented place, and things like sculpture, wood carving, handicrafts, dance, theater, etc., go back hundreds of years. One specific type of music coming out of Bali is called gamelan music, and it is a sort of percussion orchestra that dates back to 230 AD. And you hear it everywhere you go. It's kind of the soundtrack to life in Bali. So, those are my main things to know about life in Bali. Every place has its downsides, but it's just best to be aware of them going in so that you can, um, not go in with those rose tinted glasses. I still think it makes an excellent choice for an adventure filled retirement. And if you're even slightly susceptible to Bali's charm, chances are you'll take the bad with the good and you'll want to live here regardless. So thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. That was a great list. I was laughing at several points. So thanks very much. We'll make sure that people are well prepared if they're thinking about a move to Bali, Indonesia. And thanks. We'll talk to you again soon. For more insights on living overseas, check out the Overseas Opportunity Letter. It's a free daily newsletter with lots of insights about living all over the world. And if you're interested in learning more about living in Bali or in Asia in general, we have a couple products that make sense for you, including our Discover Asia kit, as well as some reports on living specifically in Bali itself. And you can click on those buttons when they appear. Thanks. This has been Kat Kalashian and Sophia Titley for the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. Bye.